I spent nearly $40,000 of my retirement savings helping my daughter and her husband. Rent, bills, even their furniture. Then I asked when the christening of my grandchild, and my son-in-law told me it was yesterday and only people who mattered were invited. They showed me just how little I meant to them. That's when I decided enough was enough. I used to believe that family was worth any sacrifice. That's what my late wife, Helen, and I built our lives around. Yes. He always said, "Joe, we don't work hard just for ourselves. We work hard so the next generation has it better." For 38 years, I taught history at the local high school. I wasn't a rich man, but I was steady. I had a pension, a small house, and a retirement fund that Helen and I dreamed we'd use to travel once I stopped teaching. Italy was at the top of her list. But Helen passed before we could take that trip. Cancer. Quick and cruel. One moment we were walking hand in hand in the garden, and the next, I was planning a funeral. After she was gone, I poured all my energy into my daughter, Nora. She was my only child. My whole world. And when she married Ethan, I told myself, this is it. This is where all my sacrifices pay off. I'll be the father and the grandfather everyone can rely on. So when the newlyweds hit a rough patch financially, I didn't hesitate. First, it was covering their rent for just a month. Then it was groceries. Then new furniture. And before long, 3 years had passed, and I'd spent nearly $40,000 of my retirement savings on their lives. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I was helping them get on their feet. But deep down I knew. They weren't even trying anymore. They expected it. I'd see Ethan lounging on the couch while I handed over another check. Nora brushing me off whenever I asked if they had a budget. I ignored the signs because, well, what else was I going to do? Abandon my own daughter. Helen's voice echoed in my mind. Family is everything. So I kept giving. Then one Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a Facebook post of my grandchild posted by Nora. In the photos were all the family members of her husband smiling. At first, my heart swelled with pride. My first grandchild. But then I realized I hadn't been invited. I called immediately. Nora answered, her tone light, almost smug. "Dad, don't make a big deal out of it. It was a small ceremony. We only invited special people." Special people. I gripped the phone tighter. "Nora, I've given up everything for you, even my retirement. How am I not special enough to be there for my own grandchild?" Silence. Then a sigh. "Dad, don't guilt-trip me. Ethan's parents were there. It made more sense." I couldn't even find words. My chest felt like it was caving in. She hung up before I could reply. That night, I sat in the dark of my kitchen, staring at the bills piled on the table. I thought of Helen, of all the sacrifices we had made. And for the first time, a terrible thought crossed my mind. Maybe my daughter didn't love me at all. Maybe she just loved what I could give her. A week later, my phone rang again. Nora's voice. Frantic. "Dad, the rent's overdue. We need your help. Please transfer it today or we'll be out on the street." For years, I would have rushed to the bank without a second thought. But that day, her words echoed back to me. We only invited special people. I swallowed, my voice steady but cold. "Nora, I only help special people." The line went silent. Then she hissed. "Are you serious? After everything? You're just going to abandon us?" I didn't answer. I hung up. And for the first time in years, I felt the faintest flicker of power return to me. That night, I pulled out all my bank statements, a stack 3 years deep. I traced the numbers, line by line. $800 for rent. $1,200 for furniture. $300 here. $400 there. My pen scratched the totals on a yellow notepad. When I reached the bottom, the number glared at me. $39,420. Nearly $40,000. Gone. Money that could have taken me to Rome, to the canals of Venice, to the vineyards of Tuscany. Money that was supposed to be Helen's dream. My hands trembled as I set the papers down. The shame burned worse than the anger. I hadn't just been used. I had let it happen. The next morning, I walked into the bank. My old legs ached, but my spine was straighter than it had been in years. Mr. Harris, the branch manager, Mr. Hale, greeted me warmly. He'd known me for years, ever since I'd opened my first savings account as a young teacher. I need to make some changes, I told him firmly. We sat down in his office. He studied me carefully as I explained. I wanted all automatic transfers stopped. No more checks sent to Nora's account. No more withdrawals on her behalf. Nothing. He leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed. Joe, I've seen this before. It's called elder financial abuse. It starts small, but it drains people dry. You've been too kind. I looked him in the eye. Then it's time I protect myself. For the first time in years, I walked out of that bank with my head high. But little did I know, Nora and Ethan weren't about to let me go without a fight. When I pulled into my driveway that evening, my stomach dropped. Nora's car was there. Ethan's too. And a third car. Sleek. Expensive. With a custom license plate. My front porch light was on, and through the window I saw them, sitting in my living room. My living room. I made a mental note to change my locks the next day. I hesitated at the door. A part of me wanted to turn around, drive to the diner on Main Street, order a cup of coffee, and pretend I hadn't seen them. But this was my home. My father built this house with his own hands, and I'd be damned if I let my daughter and her husband claim it. I opened the door. Nora jumped up, her smile brittle. Dad, finally. We've been waiting. I frowned. Without asking. Ethan didn't even stand. He leaned back in my recliner, and smirked. We needed to talk. It's important. That's when I noticed the third man. Dark suit. Briefcase on the coffee table. He rose, extended a hand. Mr. Harris. I'm Mr. Fisher, attorney at law. My heart sank. This wasn't a family visit. This was an ambush. I stayed standing, arms crossed. What is this about? Nora's voice softened, rehearsed. Dad, we're worried about you. You've been forgetful. Unstable. Spending money in ways that don't make sense. I laughed. Sharp, bitter. Spending money? On who, Nora? On you. Her face hardened, but she pressed on. We just want to help. Mr. Fisher is here to explain. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Harris, your daughter and her husband believe you may no longer be capable of managing your finances responsibly. They're petitioning the court for power of attorney. The words hit me like a fist. Power of attorney? My voice cracked. Ethan leaned forward, smug. It's for your own good, old man. You're draining your savings. You'll be broke in a year. Let us handle things before you ruin yourself. My hand shook. Not from weakness, but from rage. I glared at Nora. You want to steal my pension. My home. Everything your mother and I worked for. Dad, she said quickly, her tone sugar-sweet. No one's stealing. We're protecting you. You're not well. That was the final straw. I slammed my hand on the table. Get out. Mr. Fisher raised his hands, calm. "Mr. Harris, please." I said, "Get out." My voice thundered through the house. "This is my home. My life. And you will not take it from me." For a long moment, the room was silent. Ethan's smirk faltered. Nora's cheeks flushed red. Finally, Ethan stood, brushing invisible dust from his shirt. "This isn't over, Joe. You'll regret this. You'll end up alone, with no one left. And when you're gone, everything will be ours anyway." They filed out, Fisher trailing behind. As the door shut, my knees nearly buckled. I sank into the recliner Ethan had just occupied, my chest heaving. Alone again. But this time, the loneliness felt different. It wasn't hollow. It was fire. That night I couldn't sleep. I paced the floor, Helen's picture in my hand. "They think I'm weak," I whispered to her smiling face. "They think I'm finished. But I'm not. Not yet." The next morning I called the only person I could think of, an old colleague from my teaching days. Margaret Keller. She'd been the sharpest debate coach I'd ever known. Now she was an attorney. When she answered, her voice was warm, surprised. "Joe. It's been years. I need help," I told her, my throat dry. "Legal help. My daughter's trying to steal my life out from under me." Silence. Then, "Come to my office. Today." Her office was a modest space above a pharmacy downtown. When she saw me, she clasped my hand firmly, eyes narrowing as I explained everything. The years of financial support, the christening snub, the rent call, the ambush with Fisher. When I finished, she leaned back, steepling her fingers. "Joe, what they're doing isn't just cruel. It's illegal. It's called elder financial abuse. And it's a federal crime." The word crime hung in the air. For months I had felt like the fool, the naive parent who let himself be taken advantage of. But now I realized I wasn't just a victim. I was a target of something bigger. Something punishable. Margaret's eyes softened. "You have a case, Joe. And you have me. But you need to be ready. They won't stop here." I swallowed hard. "I'm ready." For the first time in years, I almost believed it. Walking out of her office, the autumn air felt sharper, clearer. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a man preparing for battle. And this battle wasn't just about money. It was about dignity. About my right to live the rest of my days on my own terms. I thought about Ethan's sneer. Nora's hollow smile. Fisher's cold professionalism. They had underestimated me. And that would be their mistake. Because I wasn't going to roll over. I wasn't going to be the old fool they thought I was. I was going to fight back. And this time I would win. The morning after meeting with Margaret, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. For the first time in years I really looked. The man staring back at me was tired. Wrinkles etched deep. Gray hair uneven, curling over my ears. Stubble rough on my chin. My shirt hung loose on my shoulders, like I'd shrunk inside it. I whispered to the mirror. "Is this who they think I am? Weak. Helpless." I leaned closer. My eyes, though weary, still held a spark. A spark they hadn't killed. And in that spark I saw the truth. If I was going to fight, I had to become the man who could win. That afternoon, I drove into town. The barbershop I used to visit with Helen was still there. Its window painted with the same swirling red and blue pole. Inside, the scent of shaving cream and aftershave hit me. Comforting, familiar. The barber, Tony, looked up and broke into a grin. "Well, if it isn't Mr. Harris. Been a while." "Too long," I admitted, sliding into the chair. As the scissors snipped, Tony made small talk. I nodded, smiled faintly, but my mind wandered. Each lock of hair that fell felt like shedding years of weariness, of surrender. When he held up the mirror at the end, I barely recognized myself. Cleaner. Sharper. Alive. Tony chuckled. Now that's the Joe Harris I remember. You look 10 years younger. Walking out, I straightened my shoulders. It was just a haircut. But it felt like a declaration. Back home, I tackled the second step. Security. I'd seen too many late-night shadows moving past my windows. Too many silent phone calls that hung up when I answered. I called a local company and had them install cameras, motion sensors, reinforced locks. The technician, a young man with tattooed arms, handed me the keypad code. Anyone tries to mess with you now, they'll regret it. I almost laughed. That's the idea. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without jolting awake at every creak. The next day, fate sent me Eleanor. I was in the garden, tugging weeds, when she leaned over the fence. White hair in a bun, sun hat perched on her head, a basket of tomatoes cradled in her arms. Mr. Harris, she called gently. I straightened, wiping my brow. Yes. She smiled. I'm Eleanor. Just moved in down the street. I hope I'm not intruding, but I baked too many pies, and I wondered if you might like one. A pie. Something so small, but my throat tightened. It had been years since anyone had offered me kindness without strings attached. Thank you, I managed. That's very thoughtful. She passed the basket over the fence. It's nothing. You looked like you could use some company. For a moment, I nearly told her everything. The betrayal, the threats, the court petition. But instead I just said, "You're right. I could." Eleanor became a friend quickly. Some evenings she'd bring tea. Other times I'd walk her dog Daisy when her knees acted up. We didn't talk much about the heavy things at first. Just gardening, the weather, our favorite books. But slowly, her presence began to fill a void I hadn't realized was so deep. And when I finally confessed the truth about Nora and Ethan, she didn't flinch. "Joe," she said firmly, her hand resting on mine. "You are not alone. Don't ever believe their lies." Her words stayed with me. Still, Nora and Ethan didn't vanish. One evening as I returned from Eleanor's, a car idled at the curb. Nora rolled down the window, eyes cold. "Dad," she said flatly, "we need to talk." I kept walking. "Don't ignore me," she snapped. "Do you think you can just shut us out? Do you know how ungrateful you sound?" I turned slowly, meeting her gaze. Ungrateful. My voice shook with restrained anger. I gave you everything. And you threw me away. Ethan leaned over from the driver's seat. "Careful, Joe. We can still take you to court and we'll win too." I stepped closer, calm but firm. "You've already lost something more important than money. My respect. My trust. My love." Their faces hardened. Nora's lip curled. Ethan muttered, "Old fool." The car screeched away. But this time, instead of collapsing into despair, I smiled faintly. Because I realized something. Their power over me was slipping. The weeks passed. My routine changed. I met Eleanor for walks. Margaret updated me on the case, assuring me Nora and Ethan's petition wouldn't stand. I even called my brother Daniel, whom I hadn't spoken to in years. When he answered, his voice was gruff. "Joe, is that you?" "Yeah, it's me." My chest tightened. I should have called sooner. A pause. Then he sighed. We both should have. By the end of the call, we'd made plans to meet. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel abandoned. But of course, Nora and Ethan weren't finished. Late one evening, my phone rang. I hesitated, then answered. Nora's voice. dripping with false sweetness. "Dad, listen. I know we fought, but Ethan and I are in trouble. The rent's overdue. We'll be evicted. Please, just this once. Help us." My stomach twisted. The old me, the father desperate to keep his daughter's love, might have caved. Might have pulled out the checkbook. But not anymore. I inhaled slowly. "I only help special people, Nora." Silence on the line. Then a sharp intake of breath. "You." I hung up before she could finish her statement. And in that moment I felt lighter. Stronger. Because finally I was free. But freedom comes with a price. Nora and Ethan weren't going to let go quietly. And soon, their desperation would cross a line even I hadn't imagined. I thought I had turned a corner. The haircut, the new locks, Eleanor's friendship, Margaret's guidance, they gave me strength. But Nora and Ethan weren't finished. One morning, just as I was enjoying a cup of tea, a knock came at the door. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in a gray blazer holding a clipboard. A police officer stood behind her. My heart skipped. When I opened the door, she smiled politely. "Mr. Harris? I'm Mrs. Schmidt, a social worker. We received a report that you may not be capable of caring for yourself." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My children. They had done this. The officer cleared his throat. "Mind if we step inside, sir?" I swallowed hard, then nodded. "You'd better come in." Inside, Mrs. Schmidt explained. "Your daughter and son-in-law reported concerns about neglect, confusion, possible dementia. They worried you might be vulnerable." Eleanor, who had come by for tea, placed her hand on my shoulder. "This is ridiculous." But I knew panic wouldn't help. I had to stay calm. I dialed Margaret. Within half an hour she arrived, sharp briefcase in hand. She addressed Mrs. Schmidt firmly. "My client is perfectly competent. What you're witnessing is a calculated act of elder abuse, manipulation and false reporting." Mrs. Schmidt asked me some questions. What day was it? Who was the president? Did I know my bank balance? I answered each one slowly, clearly. My voice didn't shake. When we finished, Mrs. Schmidt closed her folder. "Mr. Harris, I find no indication of neglect or incompetence. This case will be closed." Relief washed over me like cool water. But Margaret wasn't finished. "Mrs. Schmidt, I'd like this on record. False reports are harassment. We'll be pursuing legal remedies." For the first time, I saw the tide shifting. Days later, the harassment escalated again. This time with late-night phone calls, notes left in my mailbox, even Nora pounding on my door shouting that I owed her everything. I called the police. An officer stood on my porch, shaking his head after hearing the story. "Sir, you've endured enough. We'll file for a restraining order." And so we did. Nora and Ethan were served. They screamed at me in the driveway as the papers were handed over, but I didn't flinch. For the first time in years, I held my ground. The real showdown came weeks later, in court. Nora and Ethan sat across from me, smug at first, whispering to each other like conspirators. Their lawyer tried to paint me as paranoid, confused, bitter. But Margaret was relentless. She presented bank records showing the thousands I had spent on them. Over $30,000 drained from my retirement. She highlighted the forged documents they had tried to slip through the bank. She even brought Eleanor and Daniel, my brother, to testify about the harassment I'd endured. Then Mrs. Schmidt took the stand. Calmly, firmly, she stated, "I found no evidence that Mr. Harris is incompetent. The report was unfounded." By the time Margaret finished, the judge's face was grave. He turned to Nora and Ethan. "Your actions constitute elder financial abuse and attempted fraud. This is not only immoral, it is criminal. My daughter's face drained of color. Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The judge continued. This court rules in favor of Mr. Harris. Nora Harris and Ethan Miller will be referred to the district attorney's office for prosecution under federal elder abuse statutes. Furthermore, restitution of $33,400 will be ordered, and a permanent restraining order is issued. Any violation will result in jail time. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. I closed my eyes, tears stinging. Not from sadness but from vindication. Outside the courthouse, Nora called after me, voice breaking. Dad, please, don't let them do this. We're family. I turned slowly. For years I would have melted at those words. But not now. You stopped being family, I said quietly, when you chose greed over love. Her mouth opened but no sound came. Ethan tugged her arm, and together they slunk away. That evening, Eleanor, Daniel, and I sat around my kitchen table. A pot of roast simmered. The house filled with laughter. For the first time in a long time, my home felt warm. Eleanor raised her glass. To Joe, who proved that even in the face of betrayal, strength and dignity win. Daniel added, chuckling, and to second chances. For all of us. We clinked glasses. As I leaned back, watching the people who truly cared for me, I realized something important. Nora and Ethan had tried to steal my future. But in the end I had reclaimed it, piece by piece. Not only did I win, but justice was served. And I would never let anyone make me feel small again.